Hi. Today John will do more sheet metal fabrication on the inner fender well.
So I had to replace this section here, which I've cut out here, something like that. I will use this to make a template, and I guess I'll show you how to do that, because this is kind of simple. It's just got this slight bend in one direction, right? This one arc, which is this direction here. I mentioned in a previous video that I had cut this area out of the donor vehicle, which I did, but it wasn't that great also. So I've decided I'm going to rebuild this area. So unlike that last little piece I showed you, this is very interesting because it ends here, right? So everything from here, really where it's not mangled, which is here, everything from here all the way down to about here is where it stops, is not there. So how do you go about fabricating stuff that you don't know what it looks like? Well, you know what it looks like is I can look at the donor vehicle, or I can look at other vehicles and see its shape, but I'm gonna have to pull kind of templates off of that. So I'm starting with this flange that comes down here, right? So it's sitting in space, something like this. How would you create that? Because it's a complex surface in aerospace world, which means it's got curvature in two directions. It's got the arc of the wheel well here, but it's also curving this way here. So it's got two curves. So I'm going to be using what I call the Fitzy technique, just to make him famous, but go check out his websites. He's very knowledgeable and common sense. So because it's got curvature in two directions, I'm going to make it in two pieces and then weld them along this edge here to give it that compound shape. And it'll be fine because this is just, again, the inner well, and then the quarter panel sits. So to create that flange, one thing I do have is the replacement quarter panel, and this is the edge that's rotted away on the inner fender, and they fit exactly together along here and they're spot riveted. So I can use this because it's got everything I need in space to define, again, just what you're seeing in blue. Just this little half-inch flange that runs along here. And then once I have that, I can fabricate the missing area, which would be, this area in here. So I've been doing it a lot through the videos, but I haven't really described what you do. But whenever you're trying to pull a template like this, what you do is you stack up layers of masking tape. There's got to be layers of it, okay? Not just one, because one is too flimsy and it'll bend in all different directions. But once you get 3 or 4 at least layers of masking tape, when you pull it off, it will retain that shape. So then you can lay that, what was a 3-dimensional shape, onto a flat piece of plate, and it will show that contour. So that's what I'm doing here. I've trimmed it to the top edge, and then if I can just pull this. If I lay that flat on the floor, which I'm doing here, you can't see. If I lay that flat onto my piece of sheet metal, that will be the exact shape I need, so that when I just put a simple 2D bend in it, like over my thigh or something, it will form this 3-dimensional shape here. And so that's the process you use all over the car. So stack up the masking tape, make it thick, trim it, mark on it, do what you gotta do, and then use that to make templates for sheet metal. So here I'm showing, this is the edge that's off the blue. I can lay those on there, and that's the edge I need. I've trimmed the blue tape back to just the chunk I need, which is these lines here. And then I've just drawn in, roughly a 1/2-inch flange. So I'm gonna cut this out, bend it over my thigh until it meets the shape of the quarter panel that I have, and this piece is done. And then we'll work on the next piece to add to this. So I've cut the piece out, and I've laid it in here, and you can see it fits perfectly. But you can also see how once you take that flat piece of metal and bend it in space, it achieves 3 dimensions. See, it's got that contour there, plus this contour here. All right, so that's what the power of laying up the masking tape, and then taking that 3-dimensional shape, flattening it onto the metal, and then reversing the process back. And if we roughly clamp it in place, it's a little extreme, but you can see the area is missing. So that's what we got to fill in next. So ironically, for the next piece, I'm going to use the fender that I took out of the donor vehicle and had to fix up, so to speak. I had to fix it in this area. This piece is new, this piece is new. I'm going to use this one to make the template to fix this project we're working on. So far I've cut this piece, right? That's the one that you just saw me cut out. So now I'm going to lay masking tape all over this area and make a template that kind of comes over like this and down here like this. Again, I can give them extra, and I can trim that off. So here's my tape. I've marked, I removed the tape and I put it back on. That's why it looks like hell. But what I did is I marked roughly the center of this fillet here, this corner bend here. Because I'm gonna kind of do that by hand, and then the other one welds on this edge, and that's a 90 degree, right? That's just a weld you can grind. This one's more looks like almost maybe a 1-inch diameter fillet bend here. So that's roughly where the center is, and I'll use that to just gauge in this bend that comes across over here. We'll see what the hell happens. Here's that tape laid on a flat plate. That was a very contoured area, right? Got contour in all directions. So it's not laying perfectly flat, but that's okay. As long as I get this shape close, as long as I'll give myself maybe a 1/4 inch around this thing, 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch around it. And that'll account for any of these dimples. I'll be able to, once it's bent and formed into place, it'll fit fine, and you can grind it to match. The other thing I needed to mention, which should have been obvious, is the fender I just pulled this off, the inner fender that I pulled this off, was the other side of the car. So I'm doing the mirror image of it, right? So just be aware of that while you're working on it. So to put this bend in, take 2. So to put this bend in here that follows this kind of shape here, it's about a 1-inch radius, and then it feathers out into the rest of the fender here. Ever keep your KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? So in this case, I made a form, and what I'm after is just a 90 degree with a radius at the bottom. I'm just laying that sheet in there and beating the hell out of it with a ball peen just to put that fillet in. But I went with you don't want this to be real thick, like a 4x4 or something, because you gotta be able to turn it to, follow.
All right. Let's get these 2 formed parts welded together.
So after beating with hammers on these high-tech forms, I've got it to probably 80%. Again, I have far more material than I need. So what I'm gonna do now is cut, because this is good material here. It's just along this edge that sucks and this area that's gone. But I've already welded this shit in here, so I don't want to be faffing around too much with this. So I'll continue this cut edge here, probably up, and then like over, somewhere in here, straight over, and then that other piece that I cut, it will continue on up here to replace this bad flange in here. So that's what's gonna do. It's gonna kind of come up over here, probably over, and then up. So I ran and grabbed the C-clamp, and I grabbed my other part, so to speak. And remember, this part is roughly bent. I gotta, smooth it out a little bit, but it pretty much matches the actual curve of the flange on the quarter panel. So I can't mess with this. I can't deviate from this. So when I get this in here like this and get it lined up spatially, it'll be sitting in here. Good camera work. It'll be sitting in here roughly like this, right? At which point I'll trim off this edge, right? Trim it to match, and then just weld them, 90-degree weld along this edge, and we'll be good. And just, spot weld it in. Not spot weld it, but you know what I mean. Weld this piece back in, do a little more bending on this, but you can see where we're headed. All right, so that first part is in, and then I've got to weld this one in, but it'll be on the inside flange, obviously. But what I'm gonna do, because the inside of this inner fender has got to match exactly to the rim on the quarter panel. So I'm gonna cut the quarter panel, because again, I'm not gonna replace this T-molding and all that nonsense, because it's hard to get up in here. So I'm going to weld along this edge that I've left. So that means I've got to cut the quarter panel. I got to cut the flange, the 90-degree flange that's made against this inside. I got to cut that flange off so that I can get that quarter panel to sit in here pretty much neutrally or naturally, whatever the word would be. And then that will dictate exactly what this missing inner edge looks like. And then I'll also be able to kind of hammer and dolly this shape to match the fender, the quarter panel, the best. Here's the quarter panel, and this is that flange I'm talking about. I got to cut that off, and then this will be able to sit flat in place correctly. So I've clecoed temporarily the quarter panel into place, because again, it's this edge I'm trying to get, and without doing it after trimming, all I'm doing is protruding at most 1/8 of an inch just in this area here. So I got pretty darn close with the first cut. So I'm going to trim this back so this will push in flush, and then I can weld on that inner flange that I need to. And then we're getting pretty darn close to putting this fender on, which I'm happy to announce fits really well so far. Very impressed. So fender came off, so I could trim this edge up, put the fender back on. I still got to put this patch in here, but what a nice fit. And now I can see behind here and machine it exactly as I need to put that inner flange on. And then, just because I couldn't handle it, I had to see if the new B-pillar fit, and it fits like a glove. And all I can say is, don't you just love it when shit fits?
Goodbye. Come visit us soon. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel.